Have you ever experienced an evil day in your life where there's a lot of days or times of things that have happened in your life where the enemy's using the pile-up method? Tune into today's broadcast where I'm going to share with you how Pastor Greg deals with an evil day and how to overcome an evil day in his life that will help you overcome it in yours.
Welcome to Wisdom for Living with Greg Moore. Join with Greg as he shares truth from the Word of God that will help you grow in wisdom and successfully navigate a balanced life with family, marriage, finances, and relationships. And now, here's Greg.
Welcome today to another broadcast of Wisdom for Living. My name is Greg Moore with Greg Moore Ministries, and man, we've been in the midst of a great series on navigating through the storms. We've already talked about how that you can identify the different type of storms in your life. They're like Jonah's storm, that are storms of our own making. Paul's storms. The storm was caused by other people's disobedience. The disciples' storm was simply caused by the devil attacking the will of God. And we talked about that, how to get through that, how to navigate through that. Then we talked about a fourth kind of storm, spent a couple of broadcasts on that, talking about internal storms like depression and self-pity and self-doubt and fear and grief and several things. So, encourage you to, go back and look at those broadcasts because, man, they're really powerful. And then the last two broadcasts, we've been talking about, how Jesus dealt with on his evil day, how he navigated the worst day. There's never been a worse day than what Jesus experienced in his going through his storm. And so, man, I encourage you to go back. You can go on gregmoore.com and watch all of the previous broadcasts, how Jesus got through his bad day. And so today, we're going to talk about how Pastor Greg overcomes in an evil day. So just before I share that, let me share a funny. This is called Frank Feldman. So a man walks out to the street and catches a taxi going by. He gets into the taxi and the cabbie says, "Perfect timing. You're just like Frank." The passenger said, "Who?" The cabbie said, "Frank Feldman. He's a guy who did everything right all the time, like my coming along when you needed a cab. Things happened like that to Frank Feldman every single time." The passenger said, "Well, there are always a few clouds over everybody." Cabbie said, "No, not Frank Feldman. He was a terrific athlete. He could have won the Grand Slam at tennis. He could golf with the pros. He sang like an opera baritone and danced like a Broadway star. And you should have heard him play the piano. He was an amazing guy." The passenger said, "Man, that sounds like he was really somebody special." The cabbie said, "There's more. He had a memory like a computer. He remembered everybody's birthday. He knew all about wine and which foods to order and which fork to eat them with. He could fix anything. Not like me. I change a fuse and the whole street blacks out." But Frank Feldman, he could do everything right. The passenger said, "Wow, this was some guy." The cabbie said, "Yeah, he always knew the quickest way to go in traffic and avoid the traffic jams. Not like me, I always seemed to get stuck in them. But Frank, he never made a mistake. He always knew how to treat a woman and make her feel good. He could never answer her back, even if she was wrong. And his clothing was always immaculate. His shoes, highly polished too. He was the perfect man. He never made a mistake. No one could ever measure up to Frank Feldman." The passenger said, "Wow, an amazing fellow. How did you meet him?" The cabbie said, "Well, I never actually met Frank. He died and I married his wife." That is funny. That is funny. I don't care who you are. So I want to talk to you today about how to overcome in an evil day. Ephesians chapter 6 and verses 10 through 13. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. Therefore, take on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all to stand, stand. So he speaks about an evil day here. An evil day could be a season of days. It could be several days. It could be a number of days. And he said, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day. And one of the enemy's favorite tactics is to use the pile-up method, where he just sends the kitchen sink and one thing after another, something breaks down, and then you get a bad report from one of your children. You get a friendly letter from the IRS. And Isaiah 59:19 says, when the enemy comes in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord will lift up a standard against him. So when you and I begin to make spiritual progress, when we start making advancement in the will of God and what God has for us, his purpose for our lives, then what the enemy, it poses a threat to the enemy. And then he tries to pile up a combination of different things that we could describe as an evil day. Financial pressures, relationship stresses, or blow-ups, strife, persecution, betrayal, physical challenges in our health, disappointments, delays, all kinds of things. And his primary aim is to get us off of the Word of God. Man, the enemy knows that if we're going to plant a tree and we put that tree in the ground, he knows that it's immediately before that tree takes root. If we're going to pull that tree out of the ground, it's a lot easier to do it before it takes root. And so the enemy is going to try to come to you and to me, to our house, right after God plants the word in your heart. He gives you a vision or a dream. He gives you direction about maybe some storm that you're in, about how you can overcome evil with good. If you're dealing with sickness, to pray for someone else. But the bottom line is God's giving you a word, a promise. Right after that, the enemy's going to come before that word is rooted in your heart. And so he knows if we'll hold on to the word, his kingdom is in trouble. 1 Peter 4:12 says, Beloved, do not think it strange concerning the fiery trial, which is to try you, as though some strange thing happened to you, but rejoice. And he tells us to rejoice. And what are we doing when trials happen, when storms come? 1 Corinthians 10:13, no temptation has overtaken you except as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you're able, but will with the temptation make a way of escape, that you may be able to bear it. And so we're in this series talking about navigating through the storms. I just read to you that we are to take up the whole armor of God, and we're to stand in an evil day. So I just want to share with you practically what I do. What does Pastor Greg do? What does Greg Moore do when he faces an evil day? How do I overcome in an evil day? Well, number one, I make no immediate major decision. When you're being piled up on by the enemy, usually emotions are running really high. And emotional decisions will not get us through an evil day. And you can feel hurt, you can feel angry, you can feel betrayed, you can feel loss, but you cannot afford to give authority to your emotions in your decisions or your actions, or your words for that matter. You need to be still. You need to pray. You need to get your cares over on the Lord. You don't need to react. You need to respond. Do not react in the flesh. You want to wait until you can respond in the Spirit. My pastor, Bob Nichols, says it this way: don't quit on your first day or your worst day. Making vows and declarations and major decisions in times of a crisis and overwhelming moments and high emotions is almost always something that you're going to regret later. So I just want you to know the first thing that I do when I'm going through an evil day is I'm backing off to pray. I'm not reacting, although I may want to. I'm not giving my flesh the liberty to react. I'm not going on Facebook and responding and putting something in all caps, yelling at them on Facebook, or I'm not sending that email back in all caps. So 3 examples of the right response to an evil day or in a big time of pressure. First of all, Job. When the pile-up method came to Job's life, and he had a storm, and he lost all of his property, and then he lost his children, and then he had all these health challenges. Well, the first thing that Job did was worship. He worshiped God. He didn't blame God. Now later, when he had all of his 3 friends come and attack him, he reacted. But initially, he worshiped God. He just lifted his hands and he didn't curse God. He worshiped God, and then he responded with a period of silence. And so Jairus, he responded to his worst fear, the overwhelming news that his daughter was dead. He came to Jesus to get Jesus to come and pray for her because she was at the point of death. And Jesus started to follow him. He stopped and allowed himself to be interrupted by the woman with the issue of blood. And Jairus didn't say a word. He could have gotten mad at Jesus or mad at the woman with the issue of blood. In fact, he could have had her stoned or had her ostracized or something because she wasn't supposed to be out. But he didn't say a word. He responded in silence. And Jesus took time to heal the woman with the issue of blood. And then he started back toward Jairus' house to heal his daughter, and they got the news that she was dead. And Jairus, Jesus said, "Don't fear, only believe." And so Jairus kept believing by keeping silence. And he didn't get upset at the woman with the issue of blood. He didn't declare that she's dead. Don't come now, Jesus. He believed Jesus, and he received his miracle in his evil day. His daughter was raised from the dead. He didn't cancel out his faith with additional words in the midst of his crisis. And Jesus, you think about that, when he received the news that John the Baptist was beheaded, what did Jesus do? And I know he was tempted to go leverage all the influence he had with the multitudes and go take Herod out, but he didn't do that. He went apart to pray. Why did he do that? To get his emotions under control. Not to react in anger, not to react with vengeance, but to get his emotions under control so then he could respond in the Spirit instead of react in the flesh. And so when he did finally, and you can find that in Matthew 14, verse 14, when he came out of that time of prayer, he moved with compassion and he healed multitudes of their sickness and disease. Where that day Satan took one out, John the Baptist, Jesus took multitudes out of the enemy's kingdom by bringing healing to them. Listen, my brother and sister, when the enemy's throwing the kitchen sink at you, when it seems like you're overwhelmed with problems, this is the time for you to go inside your relationship with God and pray and get your cares over on the Lord, and don't make any immediate decision or reaction. And then number 2, This is what I do. This is what I've done. That's really helped me and kept me constant and has seen me through. I mean, challenging situations that I could tell you about. I've gone through, I've gone through all kinds of things. $9 million frivolous lawsuits and involuntary church plants, people lying about me, all kinds of things in life. I've gone through cancer and my sickness in one of my son's lives and all kinds of things that have attacked me. But I've learned that I don't need to react. I need to respond in the Spirit. And then I go into prayer. And Jesus said, when you enter your closet in Matthew 6, shut your door. And so I take the time to shut the door on everything I'm tempted for my flesh to do and react with. And I get my cares over on the Lord. And I receive the Father's perspective on the situation. Matthew 26:41 says, pray that you enter not into temptation. In Philippians 4:6-7, it said, instead of being anxious in everything through prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, make your requests be known unto God and get your cares over on the Lord. And then the peace of God that surpasses all understanding. You don't know what to do in your natural mind. The peace of God will guard your heart and mind from the temptation to do the wrong thing. And man, I get God's perspective on the situation. Then I'm able to move out in the Spirit instead of react in the flesh. Prayer will help you do that. It'll help you respond in the Spirit instead of reacting in emotionally, instead of making terrible decisions that you would regret later. Jesus responded to a pressured situation when they brought the woman caught in adultery to him. And he had a dilemma between acting on the law and stoning the woman or releasing mercy to her. And in order for him to get that wisdom, he took time to draw on the ground. And I don't know what he was writing on the ground. It could have been the Pharisees' girlfriends' names. I don't know. But while he took time to draw on the ground, he was taking time to draw on the Father for wisdom. And that's how he came. You wonder, how did Jesus know to say the right thing at the right time that would both not violate the law, but would also release mercy toward this woman? And he got that because he spent time in prayer. He made himself present to God. God's always present to us. But if you want to overcome in an evil day, you want to know the right thing to say, you want to defeat the devil at every hand, make yourself present to God. That's how he knew what to say. That's how he knew to tell them, whoever is without sin among you, let him cast the first stone. Because they knew that they had sinned also, and they'd have to, if they cast a stone at her, they'd have to get in the same line. And then he told her, where are your accusers? And she said, well, they're gone. He said, well, neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. And so this was a point of action of Jesus praying and making himself present to God. And in the case of John the Baptist being beheaded, the same way, Jesus went apart to pray. He modeled this for us, guys. When the enemy's throwing the kitchen sink at you, when he's throwing his best at you, go inside your relationship with the Lord. Shut your door on the things that you're tempted to do and respond to. And cast your cares over on the Lord, and you'll pick up God's perspective, and you'll be able to respond in the Spirit instead of react in the flesh. And then, number 3, receive godly counsel before making decisions and taking action. Even when I go to pray and get my cares on the Lord, and I feel like I have his wisdom, I'm going to get counsel about it to make sure that I'm safe. Because each of us are limited. Each of us know in part, 1 Corinthians 13:9. But Proverbs 24:6 says, for by wise counsel you will wage your own war, and a multitude of counselors are safety. Proverbs 11:14 Where there is no counsel, the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors, there's safety. Proverbs 20, verse 18, plans are established by counsel. Wise counsel wage war, and with the well-advised is wisdom, Proverbs 13:10. So our perspective is limited, my brother and sister. And man, I tell you, counsel, godly counsel has helped me, saved my bacon so many times, saved me from making a bad decision. And so counsel helps provide us with more real, clear, complete, objective picture of what we're dealing with. Then number 4, identify the priority issue and deal with that. Philippians 3:13, Paul said, this one thing I do. When the pile is so high and the enemies come against you with so many different things, you're going to be tempted to focus on so many different things. But if you're going to get out of that situation, you have to start somewhere. And so you can't start by focusing on everything, like the whole pile. It's too big, it's too enormous. But do the one thing. What one thing can you do? What one thing has God put in your heart? Maybe you can't do everything. Maybe you can't get everything fixed. But you know what? I can do one thing. If you're in a health battle, you can pick up the phone and call someone who's also in a health battle and pray for them. If you're in a financial battle, you can take $10 and sow it into a ministry or help somebody give somebody a meal. You can do something. Do something lest you do nothing. And diligence is not working hard. Diligence is focused energy. You're focusing on one thing. You're saying, Lord, I can't eliminate the whole pile, but what one thing can I do? And God is speaking to someone right now. You've felt overwhelmed, but there's one thing you can do, and just do what God told you to do. And what happens is, it's like dominoes. I've seen it time and time and time again. When I feel overwhelmed at so many problems, it seems so big, God shows me one thing I can do. I want you to pray for this person. I want you to give to this ministry. I want you to give an extra offering to the church. I want you to pick up the phone and call someone and encourage them. You're discouraged. How do you overcome discouragement? It's not rocket science. Encourage somebody else. Praise God. What one thing can you do? You're watching right now, and I'm telling you, God's speaking to someone, many people, about there's one thing you can do. You might not be able to get rid of the whole pile right away, but I tell you, when you act on that one thing, it's like dominoes, and the whole thing will start falling apart, and the enemy will be defeated, and God will make a way and open up and give answers in every one of those areas that you couldn't do anything because you did one thing. Praise God. You'll begin to see your way more clearly. Good things begin to happen, and the pile will start diminishing. Finally, number 5, what do I do when everything seems like I'm in an evil day and the devil's using the pile-up method? I just get involved in helping someone else who's in a crisis, someone else who's in need, someone else who's overwhelmed with the pile-up method in their life. I get out of myself. If I'm sick, I'm going to pray for somebody else. When my son Michael was so sick, my wife went to the hospital and prayed for other children. I'm not, as you give, it'll be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over will God give back to you. If you need encouragement, encourage other people. If you need help, help somebody else. If you need finances, sow in somebody's life. Listen, guys, in the midst of an evil day, God will turn that around to become a resurrection day for your life and the life of others if you won't allow yourself to become overwhelmed. If you'll just take this counsel that I've shared with you and act on some of these things. Don't make an immediate decision. Pray and get your cares over on the Lord. Receive godly counsel then identify one thing that you can do, and then do that and watch God come through for you. And then get involved helping someone through their evil day. Man, I'm so blessed to have been a part with you today of this broadcast of Wisdom for Living. Thanks for tuning in.
Discover how to unlock the hidden wisdom of God and make good decisions for your life when you read Greg's brand new book, Walking in Wisdom. In this book, you will learn practical steps to help you reap the benefits of godly wisdom, as Pastor Greg shares from over 40 years of walking out biblical truths and principles. Get your copy of Greg's new book by going to gregmoore.com today.
If you've been blessed by this series, Navigating Through the Storms of Life, I encourage you to go to my website, gregmoore.com, and pick up a copy of this series. Maybe even consider picking up 2 copies, ordering 2 copies. You can get it by USB format, DVD, CD. I know it'll be a blessing to you. It'll also bless others. So check it out, gregmoore.com.
Today's teaching, Navigating the Storms of Life, is available in a 5-disc CD or DVD album, or on a USB flash drive containing both audio and 4K video. Go to gregmoore.com and order your copy today. While visiting gregmoore.com, you will find all of Greg's books, CDs, and DVDs. You will also be able to access his blog, free teachings, and connect with him on social media. Visit us today at gregmoore.com. If you've been blessed by today's teaching, we would like you to consider partnering with Greg Moore Ministries. Your partnership will help expand this broadcast around the world to give people the opportunity to grow in wisdom, Christ-likeness, and grace. Go to gregmoore.com and become a partner today. Remember, you can order resources or partner with our ministry at gregmoore.com or by writing to us at P.O. Box 7702, Woodland Park, Colorado 80863. We look forward to hearing from you today. Join us again tomorrow for more Wisdom for Living.
Guys, quitter's disease is terrible. It impacts so many people, and it'll impact your future. And I'm not speaking this in a condemning way toward anybody who's given up, but we're talking in this series about how to navigate the storms of life. Let me tell you how not to do it. Faint. That's how not to do it. You can't get through the storms of life quitting on marriage, quitting on your children, giving up on them because maybe they're not living the way you want them to do. Don't give up on people. Aren't you glad that God didn't give up on us? Aren't you glad God didn't give up on you? Man, don't give up on others.
That's tomorrow on Wisdom for Living.